This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.
And welcome back, everybody. Something very different today. And I've never done a podcast with anybody who does what he does. I find it fascinating. Essentially, we're talking about wildlife art, also known as taxidermy. What makes his company radically different is it's not just for one particular region of the United States. They are worldwide, been doing this for decades. So much to talk about with Jamie Moorehead, who joins us on the program today. How are you doing?
Good morning, sir. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
So many questions.
Yes, sir.
Things I've been wondering about for years.
Ask away. Yes, sir.
I feel we're going to get to a lot of them today.
Sure.
First off, let's go here.
Okay.
What are the biggest misconceptions that people have about taxidermy? Anything stand out for you?
A lot of it is, a lot of taxidermists are hunters, but a lot of times your hunting passion kind of dwindles as you progress into your business. So a lot of times, even though you do start out as an avid hunter or fisherman or whatever the case may be, a lot of misconceptions are that you are the person that is, I hate the term killing. We use harvesting animals, but a lot of times there is that misconception. And ultimately, all we are doing is basically just taking that animal that the hunter or whomever has brought to us and just trying to bring it back to life. So we're not masters of death. We're trying to bring whatever it is and revitalize it to its natural state. So I do think there's a misconception in that. I think there's a lot of,
no, I totally got you on that.
Yeah.
You're on the other side of it where, whoever decided to do what they did in terms of hunting or whatever the reason was, harvesting.
Right.
You get it after that. You have nothing to do with, how it got to you.
That is correct. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Such a unique craft. And you've been doing this for at least 20 years, right?
20, going on 22 in January. So,
amazing.
Yes, sir.
I got to ask, and usually I save this question for later on,
yes,
but got to go back to the beginning here. Jamie, how did you learn this craft? How did you get interested in it?
Well, personally, how I got started in it, as far as the interest is concerned, there's always been an interest in the craft itself. As a young kid, I was always leaned towards the wildlife art itself with pen and paper, actually, drawing it out. But in the back of my mind, always being, noteworthy of just finding it fascinating. And it wasn't until we purchased our property that we are located now, that I told my wife, I said, well, Cripple Creek runs through our property. I said, that has a kind of a unique name. I said, Cripple Creek Taxidermy. I think I would like to do that. And she said, well, whatever floats your boat. If you want to do it, do it. So I was at the time working at the Nissan plant in Smyrna. And I had an older gentleman I was working with, and he said, well, back in the late 70s and early 80s, he had dabbled in some taxidermy. And he said, if I can find my old catalogs, he said, I'll bring them in tomorrow and you can have them. And sure enough, a few days passed and he came in and he laid a catalog on the table, and I was able to take it home the following morning and flipped through the book and was just fascinated with everything that I could see. I called the number on the back of the catalog, and lo and behold, they were still in business and even in business to this day. And I just called the phone number, and I asked the lady that answered, and she said, well, anyone that's wanting to get into it, she said, we have some educational videos and things of that nature in the back of our catalog. And I said, well, sign me up. So we went ahead and ordered a few catalogs on white-tailed deer. We ordered one on fish and mammals and things. So to kind of date myself, they were old VHS cassettes when I ordered them. So it shows you pretty much the timeline there. So once we got the cassettes and kind of looked at them, I figured out real quick that watching someone do something is a lot different than actually doing it yourself. I can watch you bake a cake, but that does not mean I can do it. So even in the videos and instructional catalogs, um, you can gain just enough knowledge, but it really helps you if you can, put it to use yourself by trial and error. So having been a hunter at the time, I had some items of my own that I could kind of guinea pig on. And then it kind of just morphed into kind of honing the skill on my own things, and then had friends that, would, if I could beg and plead them to use, their animals, and, no harm, no foul if we mess it up. So it was just one of those things where it morphed into starting on your own stuff and kind of guinea pigging your way up into the point where you could start charging for materials, and then slowly start charging for, profit, so it would seem. So but that's how I personally got started. They do offer schools, and you can do that. There's a lot of people that do those. They're fairly quick courses, and they're relatively expensive. At the time, I could not afford that, so we basically just did it on our own. I didn't want to, I felt odd going to a taxidermist that had been in business for, say, 20, 30 years, and kind of encroaching on him in a way. I know there's some that are willing to do that, and more power to them, but it just personally, it wasn't for me. I thought that, it would be a little off-putting to walk into a man's shop and ask them to teach me how to learn their
Mm.
trade, so that one day I may be able to put them out of business. So it's just one of those things I just always kind of felt was a little off-putting. So we just we just did what we did, and we'll give the good Lord credit for that. So
Mm. I always wondered about this. I believe everybody else is not being fully familiar with it, but
sure.
can you walk us through the general process of creating a piece?
Sure. So it ultimately begins with the care and condition of the animal when the hunter harvests that animal. So if it's taken care of from the field, once we receive it, it depends on where the location is we receive it. So if it's local in our area, a lot of times we will receive a fresh skin, that has been, skinned from the actual field and brought to us, whether it's a deer or whatever the case may be. So international skins are usually salted, so there is a process in that, because you have to hydrate skins and things of that nature. So once you have that skin on the table, basically what we do is we have to remove any and all meat and sinew, fat off of that skin. So that's basically what they call the fleshing process. So on the fleshing process, you have to remove all of that internal meat on the inside of the skin itself. So once you have all that, any kind of residuals removed, then it goes through a washing stage and then a tanning stage. Now you're tanning the skin to lock the hair follicles into the skin. That way the hair doesn't fall out. Once that skin has been tanned, then you can basically put it on your form. So they make several different forms, like the supply company I was talking about earlier. Certain supply companies offer, anywhere from, hundreds of forms and varieties of forms that the client may want, as far as different poses and things of that nature. So,
Mm.
um, you know, while a lot of times while you're waiting on your skin to tan, you can go ahead and be ordering your forms. And while your forms come in, your skin's tanning. Once your forms arrive, you can put your skin on your form. Once the skin has been put, and it's basically like taking a pair of socks inside, off, and on. So you're basically taking that on the animal itself. If you can imagine just peeling a sock off your foot inside out, you're just removing that skin off the carcass. Once you've tanned it, now you're basically putting that skin right back on your foot, which would be the form. And then once it's mounted, so to speak, then you would pin it. We use wire pins, and hide paste and things like that to hold the skin intact while it's doing the drying process. So the drying process of taxidermy is probably one of the longest procedures in the A to Z process because heat and humidity, um, you know, all those things play a factor in it. We run dehumidifiers a lot of times to try to pull moisture out of the air. So the more moisture you can pull out on a quicker timeline, the sooner that skin's going to dry. Once it's dried, then you will go in and pull all your little pins and wires out, and then you'll fill any kind of void, a hole or anything like that that may be placed by a pin. It's what we call the prepping process. So once we pull the pins, we will prep it, usually with an epoxy compound. And then once we're done with that, we will paint it. Once it's painted, it goes through a final inspection, and then it's ready to be hung on the wall. That process can last anywhere from, it depends on what time of year. So if we only had one client, and we were doing, say, for instance, one deer, that one deer could be anywhere from start to finish, probably a 3-month process. So
Wow.
yeah. So
So
how
let me
we,
make sure we heard that clear.
yeah,
Could be a 3-month process from the moment you receive to the moment that you're finished.
that's correct. That's correct.
Wow.
How we operate is we typically operate on a 15 deer a week schedule. So we start at the beginning. If you were just to begin at the calendar month, the first week of the month, we will mount our first 15. We do 3 deer a day, 5 days a week. So we can do 15 deer in a week. As we rotate through the calendar, once we get down into our, say, 6th, 7th, and 8th week, that very first week is ready to be prepped and painted. And as we were mounting, say, the 9th week of mounts, then that second week is ready to be prepped and painted. So there's a rotation there continually throughout the process. So it adds up fairly quickly when you're operating with the numbers that we operate. So.
Wow. Um, when you say tanning process,
Mhm.
that's essentially the same for anybody that has an article of clothing, or let's say, an authentic woman has a bag or anything. It's kind of the same thing, right?
That is exactly right. So on leather tanning for apparel and things of that nature would be a hair off tan. What we do is a hair on. Obviously, we have had requests for hair off tanning, but there's a different process, different chemicals that you would use in that. So what we are doing, uh, ultimately, we're wanting to lock those follicles into that epidermis. So, and actually, that's where the word taxidermy comes from. So you're taxiing, the Greek word for taxi, to move, and then dermy on the epidermis of the skin. So you're moving that epidermis. So you're basically doing that. But yes, as far as the tanning process is concerned, that is true. It's basically the same process. It's just the difference between hair on and hair off tanning. So.
So essentially, when you do what you do, we're just dealing with the skin of the animal.
Correct.
Antlers, is that actually the antlers that came from the animal?
Yes, sir. That is the actual animal. So when you went, just in using the deer for a reference as an example, the only two items that you're getting back that is the actual um, the animal itself is the hide and the antlers. The eyes are going to be glass eyes. The nose pads, we recreate our nose pads. The nose, a lot of times on a deer specifically, once that animal has been deceased, um, all the blood capillaries that's filling in that animal while the animal is alive, they protrude. So when the animal's dead, uh, there's no blood pumping through that body, so it just kind of deflates. So we do add capillaries back to the nose pads that give it a lifelike effect on that. So there's some little tricks here and there that we can do to try to enhance that. But ultimately, yes, sir, you're looking at a hide and antlers on the deer is actually what is belongs to the original animal. So.
Okay, so what is inside the skin to give it the form?
So the form actually is a polyurethane foam form, and that is from a supplier. And like I say, there's several suppliers throughout the country. Depending on what the client wants, depends on what supplier we will use. There are some larger suppliers than others. They kind of have a larger network, and several hundred choices to choose from. So, specifically when an animal's brought in, but that is one of the main things that we do once the animal is brought in on our table, and whether it's an international shipment or a fresh animal, we will measure that animal. So there are measurements that are taken off of that skin. Once we take those measurements, then we can look through our suppliers, match those measurements, order
Wow.
the mannequin that fits that animal the best, and then and that way you're not having something that's, you're not having say a fawn on a large adult deer or vice versa. So they make different mannequin measurements based off of what uh, that animal size is, or relatively close to it. So
Just amazing. These are all the things, and you address the eyes. Was going to get to that, so
sure,
thanks for getting there.
absolutely.
Wow. So, what is actually keeping the skin on the form?
Well, that goes to hide paste. So they make a glue that actually, once you get that polyurethane foam form, they make a hide paste, and they make different paste. The one that we use actually has an insect inhibitor, so it prevents any kind of bug infestation. So it has been infused with that. So when you're basically applying that glue, so to speak, on that form, once you put your skin on that form, that hide paste will adhere that skin to the form, and that's another reason for the pinning and using wires, so you can kind of manipulate the skin in a form way that you want it, pin it, glue it, and then once it cures and dries, then you can pull all those things out, and it's right where you need it to be. So
And you answered another question that was coming in terms of pests, insects, and things like that. That's
sure,
on the inside.
it
What
can
about
be
what about
right.
the outside?
So on the outside, well, it actually works through the skin. So it works in a sense where it may be applied on the inside, but as that skin is drying, it's almost like a sponge. It almost works its way through the skin, so it prevents any kind of infestation. They make additional sprays that you can spray on top of the skin and things of that nature. But if you remove as much of the, well, not just as much. If you remove the hide, as far as the meat and sinew and all that on your fleshing end of it, and you tan it correctly, um, you shouldn't have any issues. Normally, when people have issues with hair slipping on a mount, it's either where it's not been fleshed properly, the tanning process hasn't gone long enough to actually set the hair follicles in, and worst case scenario is the person have a bug infestation in their home anyway. We have seen that before, where you have, if you have an infested mount that comes in from another location, it can kind of spread like wildfire. So you want to make sure that you, in a sense, quarantine it. If you have a bad mount and you know this animal's got a bug infestation, you need to remove it from your others, or it'll spread to the others.
Oh, it can
So,
happen in any way. And I'll just share with you. Last night, I was thinking, it's been a while since I ordered some pillows. I'm going to get some fresh pillows. It's been,
sure,
probably 5 years or whatever,
right.
probably too long. And then I'm looking on Amazon, I'm looking at reviews of different companies, and I look at everything. And surprisingly, how many people report new pillows being shipped to them have bed bugs? I'm like, what?
That's
So I'm
exactly
rethinking
right.
that. And I
That's
go to the
exactly
store for that. My
that's
point there is that you never know where it's going to come from.
that's right.
Somebody may have sent you something and it was already infested just because it was in the barn or whatever. When they're shipping internationally, I'm wondering how much is intact in terms of the flesh, because I'm guessing that would add weight in terms of the shipment.
That's true.
What can you tell us about the worldwide side of what you do?
So the worldwide aspect of that, that is the main reason we have both federal licensing. So we have a federal import-export permit, which allows us to receive pretty much most plains game animals around the world. We also, in addition to that, have a USDA restricted permit. So under the USDA restricted permit, that permit is applied to mainly not just limited to, but mainly three main species, which would be any of your swine species, avian species, or non-human primates. So ultimately, pigs, birds, and monkeys are the top three disease carriers when in the animal world. So when it comes to international shipments, what they're wanting us to do, and that's part of our job, is to, once they've cleared it through the exporter and it enters the United States at the importer, when it comes to an approved establishment, our job is to disinfect those skins. So once we receive a shipment, some countries are a little more lax than others when it comes to curtailing their infestations. So you have to deal with that on a weekly basis, but ultimately that's what we have to do. And there is a procedure from the moment we receive an international shipment, the disinfecting process. Even once we've gone through the disinfecting of a particular skin, even the trimmings off of that skin have to be incinerated. So you can't just throw those out; they have to be burned. So there's a different protocol in that. But yes, so that's ultimately what that amounts to. But yes, it goes through most international shipments go through a highly critiqued process from the port of entry. So
Amazing. So many questions. We're almost out of time. I gotta wonder, in the beginning, did any of this, lack of a better description, gross you out in terms of, removing things and getting the skin ready?
Not necessarily on the gross out side of things. It was just there are certain species that over time you have to learn. And I will say that there's a lot of similarities. So a lot of, in the beginning, was a little overwhelming because you're like, okay, well, if you just, for instance, started on a deer, how in the world are you going to do an elk, or how are you going to do a moose, or how are you going to do a caribou, or whatever the case may be?
Sure.
But as we've proceeded and progressed in our business, there are a lot of similarities in those species. So it's not necessarily the gross. There now, all jokes. There are some that are a little like, I don't know if I want to do that or not. So,
yeah, give that to Jimmy. I don't want to do that one.
There's some that you are like, we'll pass that down the road and let the other guy do that. But,
yeah. Well, it's all very similar. Even humans, mammals,
True.
fascia, I'm sure you're, aware of. And
Right.
for anybody that doesn't know, you cut some chicken, some cutlets making dinner tonight. That white stringy stuff in there is fascia that holds everything together. And that's in us too. People
Right.
get, or should get, even after surgery, myofascial release massages and techniques and everything just to free that stuff up in there. I guess we'll stop at this point.
Understood. Yes.
Your business is called Cripple Creek Taxidermy.
Yes, sir.
And you talked before about aging us, so I'm going to say, the song by the band Up on Cripple Creek, right?
Oh, yes, sir. Absolutely.
Which I believe is not from your area of Tennessee. It's about Louisiana, I believe.
Maybe. I know we had an opportunity back in 2009 to go to Cripple Creek, Colorado, and we heard that who was the original Cripple Creek. So there's that whole thing. So
I'm pretty sure it's Louisiana. Back in the day, I loved the band. Song came out in I Know Music, 1969. It's been around a long time, but and as your business has been. If somebody wants to find out more, learn more, maybe some questions, this can be seen anywhere on the planet, and you do operate worldwide. What's the best way to find you, Jamie?
You can contact us at cripplecreektaxidermy.com. We have Facebook, we have the Instagram, and we have instructional videos on YouTube as well. So
thank you for all the insight. This is all the stuff. You go to a restaurant, somebody's house, whatever, and you see, an animal mounted. You always wonder, all of these questions, so many more I'd love to get to next time we get together. And thanks for being here today.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure.
Likewise. We'll be right back.
This is the Global Podcast Network, where executives and professionals connect, share, and inspire. Stay tuned for the conversations that drive success.